don't start the job yet. Here comes Clyde, and he's got somebody with him.
Say, maybe that guy's my replacement, Tech.
Don't be silly, Ben. You can tell he's an apprentice. He's probably going to help you so that you'll have more time for the important jobs.
Before you get going, Ben, meet Dale Miller, our new apprentice. I'd like to break him in on body service so he can give us a hand when we get rushed.
Howdy, Dal. Welcome to the Master Tech Club. This is Tech.
Hiya, Dale. Hop aboard. You're in mighty fine company. Ben and Clyde are experts.
Just what I need, Tech. I'd sure like to learn so I can help out.
Well, with that attitude, Dale, you can't miss. Let me show you what we're going to fix. The window fit at the vent frame isn't right and should be corrected. It looks bad and seals worse.
I see what you mean, Ben. Where do you start to correct a condition like this?
That's simple, Dal. You always check door fits first, and I've already done that on this car. Window adjustments alone won't help if doors are out of line or if the openings aren't squared up. So if doors do need realignment, here's how you do it. You always check overall appearance of the doors to begin with. Spacing around each door should be as even as you can get it, and all the chrome molding should line up. Center each door in its opening as well as possible. And besides that, all doors ought to open and close without tugging or slamming, and they should fit flush with the adjoining panels.
On Hardtop, start any door adjustments at the rear door. That's because you can't shift the rear quarter panel.
Go from rear to front, eh?
Right. And see if the belt line on the door lines up with the quarter panel like it should. Now, this one's okay. But if it weren't, you can loosen the striker and hinge mounting bolts and reposition the door in its opening to get that belt line squared up ship shape.
Attaboy, Ben. In general, always use the built-in adjustments provided. By loosening hinge mounting bolts, you can move doors in, out, up, down, fore and aft, and then retighten the bolts.
I understand. You'd readjust the striker, too, wouldn't you?
Yep, and you adjust that striker to get a very slight lift on the door. Keep the striker on a level plane for easy door operation. The latch should also make firm contact with the striker, or the door might rattle.
Now, occasionally, Dal, you might find interference between the upper rear corner of the rear door and quarter panel. You may have to correct it by shimming at the number 3 and number 4 body bolts to square up the door opening. Now, that may call for adjusting the hinges to center the door. If there's not enough adjustment at the hinges, you can shim them to move the door rearward as needed.
Okay, Ben. I'll keep that idea in mind.
Yeah, by the way, Dale, if the spacing at the front door isn't even between the front edge and the rear edge of the front fender, you can move the fender.
Oh. Good thing this fender doesn't have to be moved, eh?
Yeah, you said it. Now, once you're sure the door fits are right and the chrome moldings line up, check the windows. If you have to make adjustments, start with the front vent frame and work toward the rear. Run the window up and down to check for binding and weather strip interference. That tells you if the window roller tracks have to be adjusted.
Check for even spacing at the upper rear corner of the vent wing frame. There shouldn't be any gap, overlap, or step at that point.
And open and close the doors, Dal, to see how the upper edge of the window frame seals at the header weather strip. Also, be sure there isn't any interference. Now, this is mighty important. Another thing, notice that the header weather strip has 3 sealing lips. A short outside deflector lip, a primary lip, and a secondary lip that's also a stop for the window. Now, as the door closes, it's important that the frame should just clear the deflector lip, but curl back the primary lip and rest against the secondary lip when the door is fully closed. Now, too much squeeze on the primary lip makes the door hard to operate. The deflector lip should slope outward and cover the outside edge of the frame.
I get the picture, Ben. Now, how do you make the window adjustments?
Well, like I said, you start at the front, remove the garnish molding, then the inside handles, the armrest, and the trim panel. 2 screws hold the front vent frame brace to the door. A single stud and nut hold the frame to the upper edge of the door. On this model, the lower end of the division channel has 2 attaching screws.
I see, Clyde. Now what?
Remove the rubber plug here and loosen the frame screw, Dale.
Okay. What next?
Then reach through the access hole and loosen the second frame screw. Also loosen the frame stud nut through the access hole and the attaching screws at the division channel's lower end.
Now, move the vent toward the windshield pillar by adding shims at the stud until it makes a good seal with the pillar. Also, tilt the frame in for better contact at the header weather strip. Tighten the frame screws and stud nut. Finally, tighten the division channel lower attaching screws just enough to take up the clearance.
All right. Guess that takes care of the vent wing, right?
Yeah, Dale, you did okay. Now, this front window comes next. It can be moved in, out, fore and aft. It's also got adjustable upper and lower stops. Now, in this case, loosen the regulator bolt nut and the roller track bracket screws that control fore and aft movement of the window. Remove 2 plugs from the rear face of the door. Loosen the 2 roller track bracket screws that control in and out movement, and loosen the upper and lower stop screws.
That lets you shift the window forward to line it up with the vent frame, Dal. And you can then tighten the rear roller track fore and aft upper bracket screw. Lower the window next. Hold the roller track against the frame and tighten the roller track lower screws to hold the adjustment.
Okay. Where to now?
Raise the window now, Dale, and tilt it so it makes contact with the cat's whisker on the weather strip and with the secondary lip on the header strip. Tighten the in and out track bracket screws to hold this adjustment. Then reinstall the plugs in the door. Raise the window as far as it'll go for a good seal at the header. Then adjust the upper stops and tighten the screws. Now lower the window until the top edge is flush with the top of the door panel. Raise the lower stop bracket until it touches the window and tighten both screws. Finally, tighten the regulator bolt nut.
Attaboy, fellas. Very good rundown. Now, who's going to explain how that rear window is adjusted?
Let me see if I can make that clear, Tech.
Okay, but first, somebody please turn this record over. Then we'll tackle rear window adjustment.
You can adjust that rear window by means of the movable front and rear window roller tracks and the adjustable center channel support bracket. But to get at them, you first remove the moldings, hardware, and trim. Loosen the upper window roller track bracket screws and the upper stop screws. Next, loosen the lower stop screw, the lower track bracket screws, and the center channel support bracket screws. Then raise the window. Line up the front edge of the rear window with the rear edge of the front window. It has to follow the curved header weather strip closely and seal well along the top edge. Now, to get it to do that, move the window forward. Then tighten the fore and aft window roller track upper bracket screws.
You lower the rear window next and shift the roller tracks into contact with the frame, don't you, Ben?
Yeah, Tech. And then you tighten both window roller track lower screws on both sides. Now, with the door closed, raise the window, tilt it outward to make contact with the weather strip cat's whisker, and see that it makes a good seal at the header weather strip. Then tighten the center channel support bracket screws. While the rear window is all the way up, adjust the upper stop screws. Be sure there's no interference at the header weather strip, or the door will be hard to open. Then lower the window until it's flush with the top of the door and adjust the lower stop.
Hey, that's very clear, Ben. Then you'd still make a final door and window check on both front and rear doors before you reinstall the trim, armrests, hardware, and garnish moldings, right?
It always pays, Clyde.
That gives me a good idea of what to do on 4-door hardtops, fellas. Now, how about the 2-door models? And how about Imperials?
Well, basically, Dale, door and and window adjustments on two-door hardtops are the same as those on the four-door job. You get a good door fit first before you move any windows around. You line up the belt line on the door and quarter panel. You can move the door in, out, up, down, fore, or aft as necessary using the built-in hinge adjustments provided.
How about that quarter window?
Well, always check to be sure there's no gap between the upper front corner of the quarter window and the door window.
The header weather strip over the quarter window has a different cross-section, Dale. It's channeled, and the glass frame runs inside the channel instead of sealing against a lip, as at the door. A wide deflector lip overlaps the edge of the frame.
Yeah, Tech's right, Dale. Now, to adjust that quarter window, you first loosen the roller track bracket screws and the pivot stud nut. Loosen the two center channel support bracket screws and the upper and lower stop screws, too. Raise the window and check its alignment with the rear edge of the front door window. Shift the glass up or down to get even spacing and a good seal at the header. Then, tighten the roller track upper bracket screws and the pivot stud nut. Now, after that, lower the window. Move the roller track in toward the glass frame for a fore or aft adjustment and tighten the track bracket lower screws. Also, adjust and tighten the lower stop. Now, you got that?
Yep, I'm still tagging along, Clyde.
That's good. Now, raise the glass and check its fit in the weather strip all along the contour. Tilt the window to contact the cat's whisker, and be sure the window frame is centered in the channel. Adjust the upper stops and tighten the center channel support bracket screws.
Nice going, Clyde. I'll bet you Dale never got lost once.
Well, it sounded fairly clear to me, Tech. Is the Imperial hardtop handled about the same?
Well, in general, yes. The Imperial roller track bracket design is a little different, and there are slightly different adjusting methods.
But you won't have to worry about that, Dale. All those Imperial differences are explained in this reference book.
Sounds like a lifesaver to me. I'll be sure to study it.
Yeah, you do that, Dale. Now, there's a mighty important story on adjusting door handles and locks that we ought to talk about. Let's take that recessed bar type handle, for instance. If the handle doesn't operate the lock, the linkage might have failed. The linkage adjustment could be wrong, or the handle might be positioned improperly in its base.
You said the linkage adjustment could be wrong. How do you change the adjustment?
Very easily, Dale. Let me show you how the linkage looks first, and then how it works. The linkage consists of two flat steel links connected by a screw and washer. The upper link is riveted to the lever that works from the door handle. The lower link is riveted to the actuating lever of the lock. Now, this turned-up lug of the lower link works in that upper link slot, which serves as a guide. There are serrated sections, too, so the links won't slip. Now, as the handle is raised, the actuating lever pulls the links upward to release the lock rotor.
I understand how it works. Now, how do you adjust it?
On all models but Imperials, you remove this plug in the rear face of the door to check linkage operation and adjust it. You reach in, loosen the screw, and shorten the linkage.
Looks very handy. But suppose the adjustment doesn't hold.
In that case, you'd have to remove the trim panel to get in and check the linkage.
Yeah, that's right. You have to remove the trim panel on Imperials anyway, because there's no access hole in the rear face of the door.
You're apt to run into a number of electric window lift jobs, Dale. When you do, always disconnect the battery ground cable before starting work. You'll save a lot of fingers that way.
I'll keep that in mind, Ben.
Good. Now, if you find a link screw with only a lock washer under the screw head, install a half-inch plain washer under that lock washer. That'll make it hold the adjustment.
I've got an extra suggestion, fellas. Occasionally, you might need more adjustment than that linkage provides. You can get it by filing the slots longer in both the lower and upper links.
I see. Anything else?
Yep. While the trim panel's still off, check operation of the remote control linkage. Slip the handle on the remote control shaft and move it back and forth. If that doesn't work the lock, loosen the remote control base screws. Slide the control away from the lock to eliminate slack in the linkage. If the slotted screw holes don't allow enough movement, use a file and slot them a little more.
Apply some approved lubricant on the pivot points of the remote control, outside handle lever, and the lock while you're at it, fellas.
Yeah, Tech. That always helps.
Incidentally, on models with the throttle type handle, check for excessive handle movement in the adapter. Sometimes the set screw is turned in too far and spreads the adapter so the handle won't work the lock. Just remove the remote control and close up the adapter in a vise. When you reinstall the set screw, tighten it just enough to hold the handle securely. Now, if a throttle type handle won't return to released position, it may be binding in the armrest guide slot. Slotted shims installed behind the remote control base will center the handle in its slot and eliminate the bind. The remote control assembly on this Imperial rear door is like that used on the front doors. The link, however, is made of steel rod instead of a flat stamping.
Early Imperial models had some differences too, eh, Clyde?
Yeah, right, Tech. Early Imperials had a link with a U-shaped bend at the lock. When owner tried to force the lock, the U-shaped end straightened slightly. This elongated the link and it sometimes wouldn't open the lock. Current models have links with a double offset at both ends for greater strength. So if you work on an early Imperial, replace the U-shaped link with a later double offset type.
I'll keep an eye out for that, Clyde. Golly, you and Ben and Tex sure know your way around on Hardtop body service.
You'll be up there yourself, Dale, before too long. And this reference book will help. You'll find additional information on window adjustments for all of our hardtops. There's also some information on door safety locks and rear door handles.
Sounds like the complete works. That's swell. I'll really study that reference book.
That's the spirit, my boy. The more you know, the better you work. The better you work, the better our service business will become.